Well, hello everyone, Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast. You know, we do talk about guns quite a bit here, but I have someone as a guest today who really knows how to talk guns because it's Tom Gresham from Gun Talk. Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show.
How you doing, my old friend? It's good to do this with you.
Yeah, it sure is. You've been so kind as to have me on your radio show several times. I think we just need to tell some of these folks who watch YouTube videos all the time and may no longer listen to on-air radio what your career is all about. Could you kind of tell us what Gun Talk is and how it got started?
Sure. Gun Talk now exists as a radio show. It's a nationally syndicated radio show, runs coast to coast, which also is a very, very large podcast. So they could get it that way as well. And then we spun it up and became television shows. So we have 3 TV shows we produce while we're at it. And now it has become this physical facility in Louisiana where we have a 17,000 square foot building with indoor shooting, outdoor shooting, TV studios, classrooms, goes on and on. We call that range ready studios. So, and you know the deal. I got started in print. I kind of cheated at this, got started with my dad. So if there's a type of medium to try, we'll give it a shot.
Oh, yeah, and you do a great job of it. And you've been at it for so long, longer than I have, if people can actually believe that. But as you intimated, you sort of got a jump start with your dad, and I think we need to introduce folks to him, especially the younger folks. Guys my age are going to know Grits Gresham. He was all over TV. He was with the American Sportsman. My gosh, he hosted that television show back when that was just about the only hunting show on television. From what, the late 60s?
Yep, it sounds about right. It was on ABC TV back when there were only 3 networks. I mean, you had 3 channels. That's what you had back then. So, but what that meant is that you were liable to get a third of the viewers with a hunting and fishing outdoor show, which is unheard of now, of course. So yeah. Kurt Gowdy was the host. Dad was a field host. And did that for a number of years. And of course, he was the shooting editor of Sports Afield magazine for 27 years. Magazine guy, book author. And then he got into doing those Miller Lite commercials, did that for like 12 years, the taste great, less filling deal. So for those who are not old enough to remember, you can actually find that on YouTube. If you look for Miller Lite commercials, taste great, less filling, or Grits Gresham, you'll find him doing those. There was some funny stuff.
Yeah. And you know what? What I really love about you, Tom, is that some guys hate to live in the shadow of their dad, but you've not only been comfortable living in the shadow of your dad, you've illuminated yourself with, regardless of who your dad was, your career has just spanned the decades, and you've done a wonderful job with your writing, your editing, and then you got into radio, and now you're doing all the things you mentioned with the different TV shows and such, and the YouTube channels. Your son is now working with you, right?
Yeah, Ryan is 3rd generation doing this. Of course, the whole Range Ready Studios down in Louisiana with the huge facility, that's all him now. And I have left Louisiana where it's too hot and too humid, and now moved up to your state. I live in central Idaho, got a great place here, and can do, unbelievably with technology, you can do this live syndicated radio show with people calling in from all over the country and can do it from the side of a mountain in Idaho.
Yeah, and you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere in Idaho, too, as far as Idaho goes.
I really am. I figured out I have to drive 52 miles to get to the first traffic light. And just to get into the little town where we're close to, that's our town, it's 1,000 population there, but it's 20 minutes, 3 miles of that's dirt road, and 5 cattle guards, and that's just the way I like it.
Yeah, you know you're living right when you've got those sorts of problems.
Yeah.
And you can probably get to town faster than someone in Boise going through all the streetlights can get.
Yeah, although sometimes you have to stop for the cows or the sheep on the road, so that's our traffic jam.
Yeah, ours is occasionally moose. That's my favorite.
Oh, man, I love seeing a moose. We get them occasionally here, but not very often.
Yeah, we usually have a resident cow and a calf hanging out between us and the neighbor. She's usually around somewhere, and then every once in a while, a bull comes through. Tell you, Tom, one year, when we first moved here, we were having fencing problems. They hadn't been maintained very well, and the neighbor's cattle were taking advantage of it. So I was back in the woods in the corner, shooing them out of there. They had Angus. So this big black thing stands up in all the brush, and I go, "Get out of I hear you, stupid. And then I saw antlers, and oh my gosh, were they antlers. This was a huge moose, probably one of the biggest Shiras moose bulls I had ever seen. And he lit out, and I never saw him again. And wouldn't you know it, that fall, a friend of mine's wife had drawn a tag. Oh, that would have been perfect for her, but I think I permanently scared him off the property.
You know, for people who haven't hunted moose, and you have, of course, my good friend Jim Reardon, who was the editor of Alaska Sportsman when I was editor of Alaska Magazine, he used to say, you know, the thing about a moose is, he's talking about the big Alaska Yukon moose, he says, a moose can hide behind a flagpole.
That's about the truth, too. Yeah. Betsy, we were calling a moose in for Betsy one time, and we ran. This thing came charging in perfectly, just like you want them to. We had some rattling antlers, and we were grunting and cow calling and the whole bit, and he broke off his fight with his buddy and came charging over to us and stopped right behind. It must have been about a 6-foot tall little pine or fir or something.
Right.
And all he had to do was step to one side or the other, and Betsy had her shot within bow range. You could see the antlers sticking out of each side of that tree. And then the wind switched behind us. I felt it on the back of my neck, and that bull just turned and streaked on out of there. Like you said, it could have been about a telephone pole would have hit that bull. Wow.
All right, I got to share with you my Alaska moose story because you'll love this because it's hunting, it's guides, and it's cartridges and what happens out there when the 450 Marlin was introduced. So we went up to Alaska and we're hunting moose with the 450 Marlin, lever action Marlin, and calling this moose, and the guide sees it's like 400 yards out, and he calls it to within 300 yards. He says, "Can you shoot it from here?" I look down at this little bitty rifle shooting a pumpkin ball bullet and go, "No, I can't shoot it from here. Keep calling." So bring him in, and then he gets to about 125 yards. He's right next to this cow, and he's in love, of course. And so I get all set up and cross bolt safety on the new style Marlins, right? And I've been told, don't engage that. Yeah, you know exactly. So I cock it, I get on him, and click.
Yes.
Son of a brisket. So, okay. And I look, and he doesn't care. He's going, okay, so get the safety out. And what had happened, of course, in holding it, the rifle, I had inadvertently put it on. So cock it again, get on him, shoot again, boom. He just kind of looks around like nothing's happening. And then halfway between me and the moose, this sapling just goes. I had cut it in half. Well, at this point, the cow has boogied. She's gone. And this young bull moose is going, where'd she go? Gave me a chance to actually work the action, put another one in, and shoot him and drop him on the spot. So that moose was going to die that day.
Yeah, his time was up. You gave him every chance you could.
I did, by screwing up every way I could.
Now, Tom, you've been around the block as long as I have, a little longer, because you got started working for your dad as what, a photographer?
I started shooting pictures for his articles and books when I was 13. And then by the time I was 18, I was co-authoring a syndicated newspaper column with him. So I tell people I cheated. You know, I got a 10 or 15-year head start on everybody else.
Yeah, that's about right. But hey, take what you can get. I mean, there are plenty of fathers out there who would love for their sons to follow in their footsteps. And many do, but not too many of them are in the position to do what your dad did for you and you've done for your son. So more power to you. Keep it in the family.
Well, I always figured he could open he could open the door for me, but that's all he could do. It's up to me to go in and actually make something of it.
Yeah. If you were not so good at what you do, obviously you would have fallen on your face. Nobody wants to read someone who can't write or listen to someone who can't speak. So, bingo, here you are.
So far, the AI has not replaced us anyway.
Well, give it time. I think by next year, you and I will be out to pasture looking for moose.
There you go. Not a bad thing, maybe.
No, not bad. No, now, how did you get into the radio aspect? Your dad was in TV, he was writing, you were writing. When did you get this idea that you would start this syndicated gun talk channel on the radio where people call in and you talk about guns of all things? I mean, you've got health shows and you've got psychologists and you've got politicians, but guns on the radio? Who could do that?
Well, I would love to tell you it was a brilliant idea of mine, but it wasn't. It was an idea that came out of a cocktail party conversation at the SHOT Show. So there you go. But remember, this was 1974, 75. The Gun Control Act, or actually Bill Clinton's gun ban, had just been passed in 94. And supposedly banning semi-automatic rifles. It didn't really, but it was a gun ban. Rush Limbaugh had been on the air for a few years, and that was pretty much it. Internet really wasn't a thing at all. And so we were being hammered in the media with anti-gun messages, and the only way we could try to work around that was with our magazines that we wrote for, and that's preaching to the choir. So conversation came up at this cocktail party. Have you ever thought about doing radio? And I said, no, I've done TV. I said, well, you ought to do radio. I thought, well, I don't know. I've never done radio. I don't know how to do that. Well, it turned out that the people in our industry were ready for it. Talk radio was new. And the conversation with one of them said, look, here's the deal. If it's talk radio, and if it's about guns, and you're going to do it, then we're in. And within an hour on the floor of the SHOT Show, I had enough sponsors to make it go. And now I had to figure out what I'm going to do with this car I just caught. So there you go. And so 29 and a half years later, been on the air ever since. And it's just fun, Ron. I mean, we talk, you've done the radio show enough now. It's just like what we're doing here. It's shooting the breeze, except that everybody can call in, and they do. And it could be somebody who really knows what they're talking about, or someone who's never held a gun before, or particularly ladies, people who are new to it, thinking, I want to get a gun. And my question always is there something specific going on in your life that you want a gun for self-defense? And usually it's just, no, it's just kind of the way things are that makes me nervous. Okay, we can talk through that. And I'll tell them, one of the things that we've learned, and we do a lot of training in our videos and all, is that if you don't have training, particularly in self-defense shooting, everything you know about it is wrong. Because everything you know about it, you've learned from TV and movies. And that's all wrong at this point. So we have to do some unlearning, yes. And the other thing the other thing I tell people is a guy will call in, I want to buy a gun for my wife. So that's a great concept. You don't get to do that. What do you mean? You don't get to buy her a gun. You can pay for it, or you can buy her classes, or you can buy her instruction, but you can't be there when she's choosing a gun because you'll pick the wrong one. I mean, you wouldn't go pick her clothes for her. It's an individual thing. And after a while, the guys go, yeah, you're probably right. I get that.
Yeah, you hear that a lot from the guys behind the gun counter. The man comes in with his wife and says, yeah, we're going deer hunting. She needs a gun. Okay, what do you like? Yeah, I'll get her a 300 Weatherby Magnum.
Oh, my gosh. Yes, exactly the same thing. Exactly. You're going, all right, sir, thank you very much. You need to leave now. We're going to take care of this.
Good point. So you got started with the radio in the 70s and hung in there. How many?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. 95.
95, not 75.
Right.
I thought you'd said 75 earlier, but 95, that 95. Makes more sense.
I may have,
Yeah, because I don't think I met you until 80. I think it was 1980. We met over a prairie dog town.
Yes, we did.
And your dad was there.
We had a good time there. We sure did.
Yeah, and you saved my rifle.
Well, we all get along with the help of our friends, don't we?
Oh, boy, yeah. I was so excited to be going on this prairie dog shoot with Gresham, and I didn't know Tom at the time, but I loaded up some rounds the night before really quickly, and I missed an entire row of 5 with the powder measure. So all I had was a primer, and we're shooting, bang, 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 and all of a sudden I get a pop, and what the heck was wrong with that round? And Tom comes up and said, wait a minute, better not shoot again. I think that was just a primer sending that bullet right into the bore where it stayed. So we took the bolt out, and sure enough, there it was.
Yeah. That's one of those lessons. If something doesn't feel right or sound right, stop, figure out what's going on before you pull the trigger again.
Yeah, and that's real hard to do with an AR-15.
It is. I remember the guys at Ruger telling me, remember the Ruger chambered for the .30 carbine? The Ruger single-action revolver, it was chambered for the .30 carbine. They got one sent back to them. It had 5 bullets in the barrel.
What?
Because he had some
5 had gone in there.
5, which tells me 2 things. One, that's a really strong revolver. And number 2, whoever was shooting that revolver not only wasn't hitting anything, wasn't expecting to hit anything because nothing was happening out there downrange, you know?
Oh, wow.
Squib
So he
loads.
just kept going click.
Yeah, well, it's going bang, and the bullet's going in and stopping,
Yeah.
you know, and he just, and it finally stopped when the last bullet wouldn't go far enough into the barrel and the cylinder wouldn't rotate anymore.
Wouldn't rotate into battery, yeah.
Oh, well. Stuff.
Yeah, well, thank goodness for overbuilt firearms.
Well, no doubt you have seen an awful lot of interesting things happen in hunting camps around the world.
Oh, there's been a few, yeah. My favorite's always the 300 Win Mag 300 Weatherby connection or misconnection.
Oh?
Ron, I can't get this 300 of mine to shoot. It's just kind of all over the place. What do you think? I picked up an empty and I says, I think you're shooting a 300 Win in a 300 Weatherby chamber. He had no concept. It was the 300 Magnum. All the same to him.
You know,
and he'd been doing it for years.
No,
I've had this
really?
for 15 years. Yeah. I got my share of deer and stuff, but it's just never shot as well as I thought it should. So he thought the rifle or the Weatherby, but it was the 300 Magnum, so he'd just go to the store and buy 300 Magnum ammunition.
Ooh, wow.
Mix and match.
Well, you know, and for those of us who shoot a lot of rifles, testing them and all, and I've had it happen, fired a 270 and a 7 mag, Remington 7 mag, because we had identical Remington 700s, and we're going back and forth, shooting them and letting them cool, all of that. And that's that old deal of get the ammo off the bench, only one kind of ammo on the bench at a time. And fortunately was wearing shooting glasses and didn't get hurt, but I got a face full of powder because that case split lengthwise all the way.
Yeah, and it's not filling that chamber very effectively.
No, it's not, but it will go off. So once again, you know, I don't care how long you've been doing it, you have to kind of review occasionally and go, all right, let's be real careful when we're doing this stuff.
Yeah, mine happened with, of all things, a 7mm 08 Remington cartridge in a 257, no, a 25-06.
Okay.
So
sure.
you've got your base cartridge, the same thing. They're both evolved off the 308.
Right.
Or the 30-06.
Right.
Essentially the 30-06, you know, and so that 708, because it was a 25-06 full-length chamber, fit in there quite nicely. But the bullet didn't want to necessarily go down that .25.
No, it kind of you're doing some bullet swaging right there.
Little bit of swaging. Thank goodness it was a soft bullet. It was a pure lead core, thin jacketed, not a problem. If I'd have been like an all copper Barnes bullet,
right. Oh, that would have
or
been
even
bad.
a Swift A frame, which shoots really well on that particular rifle.
Right.
But the way what you said about keeping one box of ammo or one type of ammo on the bench at the time, I was doing that, but I was in the middle of switching when the phone rang. So here's another caveat.
Distractions.
Turn your phone off. Yeah, don't get distracted. No music, no phones, not a bunch of guys talking to you and laughing, and you've got to concentrate on that stuff. Because I had removed the ammo, brought in the new ammo, and I didn't put the 257 or the 25-06 away to bring the 708 out. I just had the ammo there. I forgot what I was doing, shoved a round in. And when I opened that thing, the primer fell out, a bunch of black smoke rolled out, and I went, wow, was that an overload? I'm going to cuss out whichever brand made that ammunition.
Right.
Then I looked at the head stamp and went, oh, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Yeah, this is a Ron issue. Yeah.
This is definitely a Ron issue. I'm going to have to complain to management.
Well, you know, and that same thing applies to reloading. If you're in the process of reloading and you get a distraction or an interruption, you need to stop, back up. Where was I? What am I doing? You know, I do the same thing flying my airplane. If I get interrupted during a pre-flight, I stop and go back and start the pre-flight from the beginning again because it's really easy to miss a step. So, you know, we just have to be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, especially with an airplane where your missed step might make that last step a doozy, huh?
No kidding. That's right. And you know where we fly out here, we got a lot of mountains and not many flat places to put an airplane.
I expect you've been to some of those backcountry strips where you have to circle to get down.
Oh, yeah, I love those things. I love doing that. That's one of my favorite things. So, you know,
that's why I never want to fly with you.
I got a theory about guys especially, okay? We, in our hobbies, are really involved turning money into noise. Think about it. Guns, airplanes, boats, four-wheelers, on and on and on. And the louder they are, the more expensive they are.
You got that right. Oh, jeez. Now, you have shot a lot of different firearms over your career. Do you have any idea of how many different rifles, calibers, cartridges you've taken game with?
You know, I never kept a log, and now I kind of wish I had. So I haven't.
Yeah.
It's not nearly as many as you, Ron, because I've done a lot of the shooting side of things and probably less of the actual hunting side of things as you have. Mm-hmm. Although you and I kind of land on some interesting cartridges that we like, which, you know, the honest part is we like the weird stuff. I mean, the first centerfire rifle I ever shot was a 257 Roberts. And it was my mother's gun. It's still in the family. And then you and I both like the 284 Winchester. It's like, okay. And we like the ones where you have to stop and explain it to somebody. I don't know what that says about us.
You know what? It does say something about us. That we're weird, perhaps. I don't know. But, you know, I was like that from the start, Tom. When I started hand loading in high school, got the reloading manuals, I immediately started looking for something I didn't recognize. And then I would check the velocities, read a little bit of the history of it, and go like, boy, that 219 Donaldson's Wasp. Nobody has one of those. Maybe I'll get one of those. That kind of an attitude is what I had.
Here's a question for you. You mentioned a loading manual. And occasionally I think about people now who are getting their load data online. Okay, fine. Or from an app. Works fine. You get the data. But what you miss is that discovery that you and I had of flipping through a loading manual and going, wow, what's a 222 Remington? And a 222 Remington Magnum? What is that all about? Things you would never have discovered if you're just looking up a particular load in an app.
Right. Yeah. It's like looking at maps versus on your phone. Sure, you can see right where you are on a phone in a very narrow area, but you don't get that full comprehension of where you are in the world in relation to this mountain range or this river and that sort of thing. And you just lose a lot because of that. It'd be interesting to see exactly how that shakes out with that younger generation. Because I by using those maps like that, and when I was growing up, I always had fixed in my brain what was north of me. It might have been 200 miles away or 600 miles away, but I just had my relationship to the world positioned pretty nicely, and it's always made me feel pretty comfortable where I was and what I was doing. And I missed that on those phone maps.
Right.
It's just, okay, I can... Go ahead.
No, I understand. It makes perfect sense. And I know that younger people are thinking these two old geezers are talking, but at the same time, I'm thinking, you know, if you go back and get a actual loading manual, it doesn't even have to be the latest current manual. Just go find one, you know, that somebody has, because usually older loaders probably have a whole bunch of them on their shelves like you and I do. And I don't know why, but I end up having like even 2 or 3 of the same one, which makes no sense. But if you get one of those and just start flipping through the pages, and often in some of them, there are actually nice little descriptions about the cartridges and how they came about and all of that. You can learn a lot, and it helps you understand, okay, you got a 6.5 Creedmoor. That's great, but tell me about other 6.5 cartridges, and where does this come from, and where does it stand, and how does it compare, and that's just fun.
Yeah, and I think what they miss is the evolution. They don't have this understanding that these cartridges all sort of feed on one another.
Well, not only that, and I guess we can kind of reveal the dirty little secret about gun writing and hunting writing, because we've all written the 30-06 versus the 308 articles forever, right? All right, here's the secret that we hate to tell anybody. It's fun to argue about this, but the reality is it doesn't really matter. Pick a good cartridge, pick a good bullet, put it in the right place, and don't worry about it.
Yeah. I did a video on that a while back, and I think we titled it on the thumbnail, "It Doesn't Make a Difference," or "They're All the Same," was the basic contention. Right. Because when you come down to, you launch that bullet, whether it was a 308 or a 30-06 or a 270 or a 7-rem mag or even a 300 mag, for general hunting distances out to 300, maybe 400 yards, you might be looking at maximum of a 4-inch more drop from one to the other, and that's still in the vital zone of your target. So what's the big deal?
No, exactly right. I mean, literally for deer, you can start at 243. For elk, maybe start with a 225 caliber. and go as far up as you want to go.
25-06, yeah.
25-06, go from there. And at the 400 yards, the difference in drop is almost nothing. They'll all kill quite well. Here's the other thing. High BC bullets. I love all the high BC bullets. But if you're shooting out of a box blind and you can only see 80 yards, I'm sorry, you could be shooting a brick and it wouldn't matter.
Boy, isn't that the truth? I heard from someone just this week, picked up a 7 PRC. Do you think that's, what bullet should I use? I'm shooting out of a blind and my maximum range is 100 yards. I think I told him to check out a 223 or a 243. 7 PRC for a 100-yard shot. Wow.
Well, I learned a trick when people call the radio show and they're asking that kind of a thing. And I'll say, well, what bullet are you shooting now? And they start telling me about it. And my answer is always the same. I think that's going to work just fine for you. Because, a lot of times they're really looking for some confirmation as opposed to actual information.
Right. Yeah. And I've said this several times, too, is that if you have something that works for you, whether some expert says it's not as good as this other choice, if it's been working for you and you have confidence in it, that confidence makes a huge difference in your success. So stick with it. I don't care if they say it's a cup and core bullet that breaks apart and won't penetrate. You just killed 10 deer in a row with one shot each. Why not stick with it?
Okay, we should start a real internet controversy. Here's the deal. Under 200 yards, you could load that high BC bullet backwards, have the boat tail going forward, and it wouldn't make any difference.
Wouldn't. Yeah. You're going to mess up a lot of sales here, buddy.
But here, the other part of that is, you never know. You don't know what the shot's going to be. Why not have something that takes care of all? As long as you're not ramping up your recoil to the point where you can't really shoot well.
Yeah. As long as you can handle the recoil and shoot without flinching, then it really doesn't matter. Now, at the same time, I'm not faulting anyone who wants to get fine details down. Someone who wants to get the absolute most energy they can out of the bullet, or the flattest trajectory, or the least wind deflection, all of those things. That's why we have all these options. It's more about us and what we want than the animal we're shooting. As you said, most things are going to work if you put the bullet in the right place, and it's the right bullet. But in the meantime, we're having fun dialing things up and getting a little bit better performance than the next guy, or even a little bit better than we got with the last load that we developed.
Well, so and that does become part of the fun. So, okay, and you and I were talking about my 284, and it's shooting 3/4 of an inch right now, and I've just got this rifle. I'm getting it going, and it's fine. I can hit everything I'm going to shoot with a 3/4 inch gun, but you know what? I want to see if I can get it down to 1/2 inch. Makes no sense other than the fact that it's just my personal Don Quixote quest.
Yep. That's it. And that's half the reason we're in this game. It's just fun. Who doesn't love to go up to the reloading room, turn off the noise in your life, concentrate on making some perfect ammunition? It's kind of like tying your own flies and then going fishing with them.
Right.
Boy, it's just way more fun to catch a trout on a fly you tied yourself. Same with ammunition you built yourself, or a rifle that you bedded or rebarreled, or any of the things that we do. That's, I think, probably the biggest part of this whole hobby that we're involved in. Now, that's not to say that hunting is strictly a hobby. I think you and I understand that this is more of a lifestyle. Some people will write in and say, well, if I'm not going to eat it, I'm not going to shoot it, and the only reason I hunt is for meat. And I always question that. You are hunting because you love to hunt. You might eat everything you shoot, and more power to you. I mean, there are some varmints like mosquitoes I hunt, and I don't eat those. And there's a raccoon getting in the chickens. I don't eat that necessarily, although I have had raccoon, and it's pretty darn good. But somebody who says they only hunt because they want to eat it, I don't think they're being honest with themselves, because who doesn't love to go out hunting whether you get something or not? It's just we get so excited about the upcoming hunting season and being out there that obviously there's more to it than just getting some meat.
One of the fun parts about hunting is that you can do it for a lot of different reasons. Some people are social, and they like a pheasant hunt where you have a lot of people with you. and that's their activity. Or a good old southern dove hunt, where you get to shoot the breeze and you're out there, you're shooting. Other people want to shoot whatever, deer. But, Ron, I've thought about this, and there are people who like to hunt, and then there are people who are hunters. At their core, they can never be anything but a hunter, because that's not what they do, it's who they are. And you've seen that in people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was me in my 20s and 30s, and well into probably into my 50s. I just had to hunt. Even in high school, when you're a kid and you're exploring different things, I want to be a geologist, I want to study butterflies, I want to climb mountains, I want to be a sports star, whatever. You gradually figure out what really turns your crank. And about halfway through high school, I pretty much abandoned everything but music and hunting. Hunting, fishing, and music, that was it. Gave up the other stuff. Not that I was going to be the winning sports hero anyway, but I would have fit in there somewhere.
Right.
I couldn't see going out to play football when pheasant season was open. So that was my calling, and it served me well all these years. I've been enjoying it ever since.
You've been able to turn your hobby into work, which is not always necessarily a good thing, because what it means is when you go out to hunt, it's always work, right?
Yeah, you noticed that, huh?
I have noticed that. And then occasionally, not very often, but occasionally I'll go on a hunt where it's not a sponsored hunt, it's not for work, it's just with my buddies. It's a different thing when you don't have to take the cameras and you don't have to do all of that. You're not producing a television show or a video. And you go, oh, I remember this. This is what just going out and hunting for myself is like.
Yeah, it's been a long time since that happened. Yeah, just in the last couple of years, I've really started to lose an interest even in the photography. And I know you are an accomplished photographer. Folks, Tom just takes some incredible photography. Even with his phone, his smartphone, he'll do it. But I used to be a passionate photographer myself, and I was always looking at everything I saw as a potential photograph. And then a couple of years ago, I realized, I'm not enjoying the experience so much as making it into a job. I make it into work. I've got to turn this natural scene into a photograph. So now I'm leaving that camera down and I'm just going to soak this in, because obviously it attracts me for a darn good reason.
Right. Well, of course, you're a fabulous photographer. Hey, don't minimize that at all. I've seen your work. But at a certain point, if you've done it as long as we have for magazines and everything else, it becomes so much work. It's like, I don't really want to take all my cameras out. I know how to do it. I can take good pictures. And I really have started shooting with this stupid phone. It's amazing how good the photos are with the phone. So I've got this line, and you've heard it before. And it's, people look at your picture and say, wow, that's a great picture. You must have a really good camera.
Yeah.
As though the camera was the thing, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, well, back in the real camera days when we didn't have the phones, we always said, what's the secret to this great photography? F8 and be there.
Be there. You got to. I always tell people, if you want to take an interesting picture, stand in front of something interesting.
Yeah, got that. And then pay attention to the light, not the subject.
Light and lines. What's the light doing? All right, here's the photo tip for the day. If you take, even with your phone, taking pictures of people, do the exact opposite of what everybody tells you to do. The person you're taking the picture of, have them put their back to the sun and have you looking into the sun with a camera. You get so much better pictures. People go, really? I said, just try it. Trust me on this. It's going to work for you.
Try it. And don't put them in the middle.
No. All right. So you remember Lefty Kreh, famous fly fisherman. Now, Lefty was a really good photographer. He was also a really good natural-born teacher of all things. A good athlete, fly fishing, ping pong, archery, whatever, didn't matter. And I remember Lefty teaching a seminar about photography. And he says, you got your fish, you got your rod, you got, all this. It looks great. And you put it out there and the sun's shining on it and it blows out. It's just terrible. He says, let me just give you a tip. There are no shadows in the shade. Take everything and put it in the shade somewhere. Now you're not fighting the shadows. That's just so smart. I just feel like the biggest dummy.
Yeah, that was one of the big revelations. Most photographers go, oh, I wish the sun were shining. This would be so much prettier. Not for a photograph, it wouldn't be. You don't want that beautiful sunshine in the middle of the day. Early and late, okay, but not middle of the day.
So what you're seeking for taking good trophy pictures, you got your animal down, your elk, your deer, whatever, and you want it to be interesting, but you also don't want it to be off-putting to somebody who might see that and go, oh, I don't like the way you did that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different approaches, as you know. You do a great job with those, but one is not to just put everything in the center and then have the hunter grinning behind it like he's the hero. Sure, you want a couple of those shots to show your buddies, like I finally got that big buck. But what is the experience? Walking up on the animal is good, or putting the animal in the background as you're walking up, or celebrating with your buddy, your arm around your dad or something to bring a little humanity into the story. Things like that. You've got to really mix it up. But clean up the animal and make it look, it's not blood and gore stuff we're doing with.
Have respect for the animal. Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't always have to be looking at the camera. When you come up on your animal, you're going, oh, look at the beautiful hide. Look at the antlers. That's what you're looking at. So why shouldn't the camera capture you looking at the animal, showing some respect for it or appreciation rather than, look what I did. Look what I did.
Right. No, good point. Exactly. So where are we going? And, this is what happens, Ron. You interview me for a while, and then I'm going to interview you because that's what we both do, right? Yeah. So you notice I'm asking you questions now.
I noticed, yes.
So where are we going with our hunting rifles these days?
Where you mean actually leaving to go hunt with them?
No. I mean, what's happening with hunting rifles and cartridges these days?
Okay. Yeah. What is happening is that we are developing rifles for shooters rather than hunters. This is my impression of what's going on. I just got a rifle the other day. A fella brought it over who's building them, and he wanted me to take a look at it and maybe do something with it, get him a little exposure. That's fine. That's kind of what I do. But when he told me what he was going to bring over, I figured, I know what this thing's going to look like. It might not be a chassis rifle, but it's going to have carbon fiber all over. It's going to have a great big scope on it. It's going to have a big magazine hanging out of it. It's going to be the kind of what's become the typical rifle for shooters more than for hunters.
Right.
And I'm sure it shoots like a house of fire. It's probably shooting a half inch, maybe even a quarter inch. But is it going to do that up the side of the elk mountain for you? For a young guy who doesn't mind carrying 10, 12 pounds of rifle around and has all the time in the world to implement all the supports that he needs on it and check his phone for all its ballistic curves and dial it and all the rest of it, hey, that's great. I mean, these kids can shoot better at 600 yards than I probably could ever at 400 or 300. But to me, it's not really understanding what hunting is and why rifles evolved throughout the late 18th century and 20th century to what I consider sort of the epitome of an effective hunting rifle. Not too heavy, not too long, not too bulky, fast enough, but not all focused on speed for how quickly can you recycle and run 6 rounds through it? I don't need to run 6 rounds through it if I'm a hunter. That kind of thing. I think we'll get back to it eventually, but I don't think that many of the young new hunters get the kind of experiences in the field that you and I had, our generation had. It was just a lot easier to go deer hunting, elk hunting, or anything else. Now you're lucky to get a tag every 4 years or something. So in the meantime, what are you going to do? Shoot steel plates. And it's fun shooting steel plates, right, Tom?
Oh, yeah. Well, this is the perfect jumping off point because a week or two ago we were talking about this. We ought to talk for a second about our friend Melvin, who recently died, Melvin Forbes, who created what I still think is the epitome of the hunting rifle.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. It's the Model 20 ultralight arms. And these days it's modified slightly into the Wilson Combat new ultralight arms Model 20. Pretty much the same basic thing with a couple of smaller changes, but I'm glad Wilson Combat picked that up and kept it going.
Yes. And, we're talking about a 5-pound rifle before you put a scope on it that still shoots less than an inch in modern calibers. And you don't go crazy and put a reasonable scope on it that weighs 13, 14 ounces. So you're walking out there with something that weighs about 6 pounds and you can carry it everywhere. It's an honest 400 or 500 yard rifle without a problem at all. And yes, there are some trade-offs in terms of shootability. The extra weight in these rifles makes them easier to shoot. But man, when you're going up and down these mountains where you live in Idaho, and you're going, man, I got to go up that mountain again. I'm trying to shave every ounce off. And when you can get 2 or even 3 pounds off the weight of your rifle, that's huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge. You know, I got started with one of Mel's rifles shortly after he introduced him. His first rifle he built was chambered for the 284. He sort of scaled that rifle around that cartridge. He figured that was the optimum short-action cartridge for mountain hunting, whitetail, mule deer, elk. Probably use it on moose, no problem. It's just the right in the wheelhouse for doing everything. And he was shopping that around to writers like you and I and saying, try this thing out and give me some good exposure if you think it's worth it. Well, I tried it out. Did I think it was worth it? I must have written 5 feature articles that first fall because I was in love with this thing. It was just perfection. And it wasn't it's going to kick too much. It did not kick at all the way I felt it. And several people I gave it to and said, try this. And they said, it's going to kick like a mule. And then they shot it and said, well, that's surprising. It hardly kicks at all. I never really figured out why not. There was some conjecture that particular synthetic stock spread recoil out over time a little bit longer or something. But whatever it was, straight lines on the comb and such, it all contributed to a pretty mild shooting rifle. And I always, after that first season, I said, this thing is a guided missile. I was not developing my loads to the degree that you are working on yours right now. I got down to MOA, inch and a quarter perhaps, at 100 yards and said, good enough for hunting. That's going to drop it in the boiler room at 300, 400 yards easily. Right. And I went hunting. And I concentrated more on the hunting aspect of it and aiming precisely and making my shot than worrying too much about a half MOA precision rifle. And ended up, as I said, calling it my guided missile. Because that first year, I shot 11 times at 10 animals, and I hit every one of them. That one extra shot was to finish one off that was on the ground, just a mercy shot, I guess you'd call it. So, I mean, who can complain about something like that?
No, they are wonderful, and I'm so glad that Wilson Combat is continuing the legacy of Melvin Forbes and what he did. But I'd also say that there are some other really nice, super lightweight rifles available today, and all of those owe their legacy to Melvin Forbes, because when we're talking 30, 40 years ago, people don't understand your average hunting rifle, Remington 700, Winchester Model 70, it was 7.5 pounds before you put anything on it. You're walking in the woods with usually like a 9-pound rifle.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, I got my first elk rifle, Ruger 77, 270 Winchester. That was like dragging a bucket of bricks around the woods. He shot like a house of fire, but oh my God, I was glad I was 25 carrying that thing around rather than 65.
And you mentioned that didn't shoot as well then as they do now, and you've talked about this a lot, our bullets, our ammo is so much better now. It is a world of difference.
Oh, yeah. That does make a huge difference. And what's really amazing are these copper bullets. When they first started, everyone was, I don't know about this, and they're inaccurate. And a lot of them were inaccurate, especially in certain rifles. I had rifles that would shoot them beautifully and others that would just all over the map. But look at what kind of improvements have been made now. I'll look at a all copper bullet with the relief grooves around it, right? Like the tipped triple shocks and the hammer bullets and different ones. Anything that's kind of a bore rider, they're always accurate. Most of them, they're turning them on lathe with such precision. And because it's all one solid material, you don't get the air gaps, for instance, you would with a lead core bullet that might not perfectly fit to the jacket, et cetera, et cetera. So we have got bullets now that are incredibly accurate compared to the old days.
They are, and you can go down what I would call it like one category in weight class. If you're shooting a 7mm and you're used to shooting 160 or 140, you can go to 140 or 120 with a lot of these monolithics because you're still going to get the penetration.
Yeah, they don't lose any of their mass at terminal performance. They expand about 2.5 times their original diameter, and if the pedal doesn't break off, you've got that expansion going all the way through the animal because you've got all the shank behind it. You haven't lost any mass. Right. Mass contributes to momentum or maintains your momentum, and that's the big deal. Absolutely right. And you get to drive them faster with less recoil.
Good point. Less recoil. Here's the other part. The sneaky part that nobody ever wants to talk about. The less a rifle kicks, the more deadly it is. And people go, how can that be? Because I want the Magnum because it's going to kill everything. He says, no, with the Magnum, you shoot animals around the edges because you're so afraid of the recoil or flinching. As you reduce that recoil, you shoot better. And I will swear you could give most people a 243 and they will shoot much better and kill more animals than they would with their 7 mag.
Yeah, Keith Atchison of Atchison and Sons, he always tells me that story. He was doing a lot of guiding in Montana back in the day, and he said, I had all these clients from back east wanted their first mule deer or pronghorn or elk, and they'd bring their brand new 300 Weatherby Magnum or some other big Magnum and miss and miss and miss because they were afraid of it. They hadn't practiced. Not to say you can't be good with those. There are plenty of good shooters that have those big Magnums, but you've got to train and work your way up to it. But at any rate, he had about 5-6 days to get these people their animal, and after they missed about the 4th one, he'd say, why don't you try this? And he kept a little 243. I forget what make it was, but he knew that it was effective. He had the right bullets for it. It was zeroed properly. He'd let them take a couple of shots with it so that they knew it wasn't going to kick their teeth out. And then they went hunting, and he said, pretty much the first animal they shot at, we got it with that 243.
But it simply works. And that's a lesson I think we're relearning with the 6.5 Creedmoor. Same thing.
Bingo.
You're not shooting a Magnum. You're actually not shooting high velocity at all. And you're using reasonable weight bullets. But because of the reduced recoil, people say, oh, it's very accurate. I can hit stuff. No, you're hitting things because you're not flinching, because you actually can shoot better with it.
Yeah, I've had some 375 H&H's that would shoot sub-MOA, but I can't shoot those as precisely as they can the 6.5 Creedmoor.
No, I had a day when I was at NRA at the American Hunter. We were doing some testing, and I shot about 75 rounds with a 375 H&H. And there is a point at which the body says, no more. I'm done. I'm tapping out. Can't do it anymore. Yeah. And at first, the groups would get bigger. And then I literally got to a point, Ron, where my brain would not let me pull the trigger. I would be lined up. I'm on there. I got the sights on. I got the crosshairs on it. I'm just shooting paper. And I'm trying to get the trigger to go off. The brain's going, buddy, we're not doing this anymore. I just I'm done for the day.
Yeah, that's your brain defending your body.
Exactly.
Smart.
Yep.
Yeah. And this is important for folks who want to get into the bigger rifles. So say you're going to Africa for something really big and you know you're going to need at least a 375. Don't shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot until you develop this kind of a situation. Mm-hmm. Take your time, maybe shoot 3 times. The next time you're out, just shoot a couple. Pretend you're hunting and you need to get that rifle in position and make a clean shot one time. That's way more valuable than sitting at the bench brutalizing yourself. What's the point of that?
What do you think about a stand-up bench for the heavy kickers?
Oh, I think that's excellent. I've got the legs for mine. I've got this Stuckey bench with your standard sit-down legs and all that. Do most of my work that way. But when I get into the serious work with something 375 and up, I'll screw on those 3 stand-up legs, and it makes a big difference. Yeah, way more comfortable.
Yeah, something about on a bench, you're leaning into it, and now you've got that stock coming right back here on your clavicle, and you're not able to move with it. Whereas if you're standing up, your body's going to move back and forth and absorb that recoil. It's just a lot more comfortable.
Years ago, I built a bench. It was a sitting bench, but I built it high enough so that I had to sit up rather than in.
Oh, okay.
And that made a big difference. Probably could use that for everything, even the stand-up thing. So I think that's a great idea. Anyone out there who's getting into a harder kicking rifle, I think, Tom, you can agree, we all recommend you start with something minimal recoil, but a lot of noise, like a 223, a 243. If you're jumping up into a center fire, start there, and when you're shooting like a house of fire, step up a grade to a 270 or something, and concentrate on what you know about trigger control and keeping your sight picture and calling your shots. I always tell people to dry fire and tell themselves, where was my crosshair when it went click? If you can consistently do that, and then someone slips a live round in on you and it goes bang, you're going to hit what you were shooting at. You won't even feel the recoil because there really isn't anything to be afraid of. Work your way up, and now when you're ready to jump up to the 375s or even a 338 Win Mag, anything like that, do what we're talking about. Stand up and do some shooting offhand if you have to,
Right.
just to get used to rocking back with that recoil, because it's not really that brutal. Obviously, there's plenty of small shooters who handle all that big stuff. I think we both know women that probably weigh 100, 110 pounds that shoot 458 Win Mags.
Connie Brooks, 100,
That's what I was thinking
100 pounds and goes out and just slays elephants and Cape Buffalo and everything. You're thinking, how can that tiny little woman do that? Technique.
Yeah.
It's knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, talking about these heavy kickers and working your way up to them. The other thing you can do, and I mean, now that we're reloading so much, you can load lighter bullets and load them down and do most of your shooting with the same rifle using that, and then just work up your hunting loads and shoot a few of those to verify. But you don't have to shoot these big kickers all the time.
Yeah, absolutely right. But for the guys who don't hand load, who can't do that, just buy a lighter load. If you're, don't get the heaviest bullet in whatever you're shooting. So if you've got a 375 H&H, don't practice with the 300 grain bullets. Look for some 250s.
Yeah.
It'll reduce the recoil significantly.
The other thing, you're talking about learning to shoot. We have an advantage today that we didn't have decades ago. We have schools we can go to and actually get instruction to become not only a better shooter, but a better shooter specifically for hunting.
Yeah. Hunting schools are worth it. I have a lot of folks who will ask me about that and say, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money just to pay somebody to learn to shoot. Well, how much is it worth to you to get that once-in-a-lifetime moose, elk you've come out to shoot? Wouldn't you rather invest $1,000 or $2,000 in really becoming an expert shot before you went out there and risked it all on that tag you've been waiting 10 years to draw? I think I'm on my 13th or 14th year of trying to draw an elk tag in Colorado. If I ever draw that thing, I want to make darn sure I can shoot straight.
Yeah, it's different than it used to be, where you could just always go buy a ticket over the counter. Now, you got so much invested, not just in the money, but in the time it took to get to that tag that you want it to all go right.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got any big hunts coming up this fall?
Well, I'm going to go chase elk back in the Frank Church Wilderness area, the River of No Return Wilderness area. I'm going to take.
Say hi for me.
I will. I know you know that area really well. I'm going to take my Melvin Forbes 284 just because,
Perfect.
right? And then we've got a little area where we like to hunt deer. Just a small group here, but those of us who are pilots and hunters, and so we fly in again into the wilderness area here in Idaho where we can do that kind of thing. And you don't get any real big deer there. It's not known for that, but it's one of those. Go hang out with your buddies, hunt for a while, camp out, enjoy the outdoors. So for me, it's gotten to where I don't have to have a really big animal. I just want to spend time with my friends hunting.
Yeah. Now, you're still doing your radio show, right? Ryan's got the YouTube and the TV stuff, but you're doing the radio.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, he's doing all the TV stuff. And if they want to look at that, Gun Talk, it was really just look for Gun Talk everywhere. You can get videos and such. The radio show is crazy, Ron. We get these stats all the time, and Apple still says it's the #1 podcast. Forget radio, podcast, the #1 podcast in the category, and always has been. So, of course, it does help to be first. You kind of, if you're the one that invented it, we were putting this on the internet before the iPod was invented, before podcasts were there. We didn't actually know why we were putting it up on the internet, but we could, so we just did it.
Well, I'm glad you did. You're quite the pioneer. I think you've probably helped all of us do what I'm doing now. You incentivized us. You showed us kind of how it was done, and you still do a remarkably thorough job of it. You're fair with your listeners. You have a wonderful command of the gun world and what makes it tick. You know your cartridges, your rifles. You've been there, done that. I mean, it's just wonderful to listen to Tom and his guests talk about things that they know. They're not just guessing at it, and they're not showboating and trying to say, look at me, I can do something stupid with a gun that somebody probably should never do.
We don't do that.
No, it's good, sensible stuff, and it's educational, and I've learned a lot from Tom over the years, and I think you folks could too. So For the radio, they have to just kind of find it on their station. It's on like 270 some stations now.
If they go to guntalk.com, we have a list of stations there.
Okay.
And if you have a podcast app, you could get it anywhere with any podcast app. Just look for Gun Talk and we're there.
Great. And then for the rest of your stuff, the TV shows, the YouTubes and all, you can find that at guntalk.com as well?
Guntalk.com. We have shows on Outdoor Channel, Sportsman Channel. We have digital-only delivery through YouTube and all the rest. Basically, anywhere you get video, again, just search for Gun Talk. We'll be there.
All right. Glad to have you, Tom. Thanks for visiting with me on this episode of my show. And you and I need to continue our conversation about this .284 Winchester Model 20 ultralight arms hunt we want to put together this fall.
If we don't do that, shame on us.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's keep working on it. I think we can do a show after we've done that hunt. Maybe we could even do a show before, just showing how we're getting our rifles ready and the hand loads and how they're shooting and all the rest of it. We could have a lot of fun with those rifles.
That would be fun. It'd be good to hunt with you again.
Yeah, it would. You could probably prevent me from blowing up my rifle again.
I think you're well beyond that now.
I don't know. I might be getting to the point where I'm sliding off the backside, getting right back into it.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, it's great to have you, Tom. Thanks for helping us out here. Hey, everybody, definitely recommend you check out guntalk.com because they not only talk guns, but they know what they're talking about. Thanks for listening in on Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast as well. We will see you next time. Hunt honest and shoot straight.